The Craig Foley Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible in part by Lynette's Shrimp House, located in Highland Park. It's Metro Detroit's premier destination, serving juicy fried shrimp, fish, and wings, alongside soul food sides and new additions to the menu like turkey tacos and desserts. Located at 13548 Woodward in Highland Park, just north of the Davidson, Lynette's is open for takeaway noon to 8 Tuesday and Thursday, noon to 10 p.m. Friday and Saturday, and noon to 5 p.m. on Sunday. Call now, get some Lynette's.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Week That Was. I am Saeed Khan, joined by our usual illustrious group of people, sometimes known as a motley assortment, but a motley crew it is. Led, of course, by our very own editor-in-chief at Deadline Detroit, Alan Lengel. Welcome. Thank you for being on.
Thanks for having me.
We also have a dynamic duo of lawyers. We have Steve Fishman and Todd Perkins. Welcome both.
Glad to be here. I don't know how dynamic we are, but we are a duo, that's for sure.
Oh, we'll get the taser out for the both of you.
When I get a bow tie like Todd's, then I'll be dynamic. But I don't know when that's going to happen.
See, I'm his Robin. He's my Batman. So
well, we talked about Superman last week. So if you are
hey, it's great. It is great to be back. Kind of. So
how was your trip?
It was fantastic. We spent a month in France, and this was a long time goal. We said when my husband retired that we wanted to spend 1 month abroad every year, and the way things were going with COVID this summer, we thought we'd better go this year because God knows what next year is going to be like. So we were in Paris for 2 weeks, and then we took the TGV south and spent a few days in Arles, and then finished out the trip in Nice, the land of topless women on the beach and all that stuff. So it was great.
As opposed to the land of the topless women on the Seine, which is Paris.
No, nobody was topless there. It's getting chilly in Paris, but it's still nice and warm in the south, so it's beautiful.
So how was le travel with le COVID?
Le travel with le COVID, if you read my column that we published a few days ago, was made so much easier in France because of this fabulous app that they have that everybody carries around on their phone called Tout Anti-COVID. And it contains the pass sanitaire, which is not going to render very well. There we go. As you can see, it's a QR code. And when you submit your vaccination, proof of vaccination, or if you're a French citizen, you can also get one with a 72-hour negative test or an antibody test. But if you're coming in from outside of the country, you have to be fully vaccinated. And they give you this QR code, and it's in this app. And when you go places like a museum or a restaurant or whatever, they stop you at the door and they say, "Passe sanitaire, s'il vous plaît," and you whip it out and they scan it and you go right on in. And I became a believer by about the third scan, because it's a great way to not only encourage people to behave responsibly around COVID, but it also, when you go into a restaurant, then that everyone else in there had to show the same QR code, and that you were probably reasonably safe. So it was I can't say enough good things.
What is somebody, all these different things where you have to show, what is somebody like me who has a flip phone? Does that mean I couldn't go to France?
No, you would have to, you would print one out. We sat at a restaurant next to a woman who did not have a flip phone or did not have a smartphone. And she just had it on a piece of paper in her wallet, and she pulled it out and they scanned it, and that was it. So, I'm sure given the size of the safety net over there, I'm sure they have, ways for people who don't have a computer, don't have a flip phone, or don't have a smartphone to get one anyway, because it was great. And then when we went to leave, to get back into the U.S., you have to have a negative test. We got our negative tests. When the results arrived, it said, "Do you want to add this to your wallet on Tout Anti-COVID?" We did. And then when we left, it was just another boop, QR code and out the door. I just want to say, in this country, we've been using these CDC cards, which are fine, but not everybody is as obsessive as I am about keeping it unfolded, bent, spindled, or mutilated. And so I know a couple of people who've gone for their boosters and have been told, "Well, where's your CDC card?" They're like, "Oh, I don't know. I think I lost it somewhere along the way." Well, you got to have it. That's our procedure. We can't give you the shot without it. Or people who, now that we're starting to see people or see venues require vaccination to get in, you got to show the card, but it doesn't fit in your wallet. It doesn't, it's a weird shape. It's not, it's not convenient. So you end up risking losing it. I had to show mine last Saturday night at a place, and it just seems like it would be so much easier if we could all agree that this is something that we all want to do, but we can't, and because we're the dumbest country.
American.
Right?
Steve, you were saying before we went on the air that you had an experience with being in a venue.
We did. My wife and I went to see Pat Metheny down at the Max on Sunday evening, and it was a little slow getting in, but everybody had to show their vaccination, or they had to show it absolutely recent, like the day before COVID test that said you were negative. And I'd say the place was 2/3 to 3/4 full, which on a Sunday night might have been the same thing, even if it was no COVID. And it delayed us maybe 5 minutes. So, if you're going somewhere, even if it's 10 minutes, you get there a little early. But I agree with what Nance said, that it was good to look around and know that everybody in there, and we have to wear masks when we're in there. That was part of the rule. Yeah. But it's good to know that everybody's vaccinated, or everybody at least is COVID-free when you sit there. And I didn't find it to be inconvenient, and I didn't have any problem, by the way, Nance, maybe because I have a smartphone. You guys have addictive devices, by the way. That's not a smartphone. Just so you know, I can't stand when people tell me how smart their goddamn phone is. Okay. But mine is simple. I pull it out. It's not all crumpled and rumpled. It goes in my wallet. It folds in half. I don't really see what the big deal is about it.
Well, good for you. I'm glad that you're able to practice good hygiene around your CDC.
Sunday, I was walking through Wayne State campus, and I had to use the ATM machine in the Union. I had to show them my card, my vaccination card, and I also had to fill out something on a tablet, like all my contact information in case they need some contact tracing. So
right,
they're
that's
pretty thorough
in this app too. If it's you can opt in to be contact traced if something happens, which we did.
Fear not, Alan. There's plenty of people at Wayne State who'll drop a dime on you. On a dime. Don't worry. Well, Steve, I mean, if you're gonna have a flip phone, man, at least every time you open it up, make the sound from the communicator on. Oh,
that was that it?
Actually, you guys will know, those who know me a long time, like Lengel and Todd. When it rings, by the way, I have the old school ring, like when I lived on Roselawn. Like when you had a party line. It rings just like the old phone. And anytime anybody's around, they go, "What the hell is that?" Well, how come it doesn't, ring my girl or something?
He can't even download any different type of rings. He just wants the basic.
Give me the basic ring, the basic phone, and everything. And I keep my vaccine thing in my wallet, and everything is fine. Life is simple.
When you text, you text, don't you?
I do not text.
Okay.
That's
right.
Yet another thing. Every client of mine learns it quickly. If they send me one, I call them and I say, "What do you want?" "Oh, I didn't really want anything." I said, "Don't ever send me a text again in life, because I don't read them and I don't text. That's it." I'm an old school guy.
You have a beeper?
Yeah, he probably does. He's just not telling us.
Some of the publicity, I think, around the Sopranos movie that opened a couple weeks ago reached me, and there was something on Twitter where the old mafiosos were complaining about the young people coming into the crime families, and they were saying they're always texting. It's like they don't understand, and you lawyers would know. It's like that's a really bad way to do crime business.
I can tell you, and so can Todd. Nowadays, we talked about it once on this show. One of the reasons we don't have near as many trials is for exactly that reason.
Right.
Guys, and they keep everything on their phone. Pictures of them with pistols, pictures of them with piles of dope, pictures of them, whatever it is. And they never take anything off their phone. And I tell these guys, I said, even with the flip phone, and I'm not a criminal, I every day eliminate whoever I talk to, get rid of them. So I don't know, it's nobody else's business,
I don't know, Nancy. You wanna collaborate and write the screenplay of Boomer Sopranos versus Millennial Sopranos?
Well, it's funny. I read fair number of crime novels, not true crime. I hate true crime, but I'll read a well-crafted mystery. And I've noticed that the more recent ones the recently published ones tend to be set in the past. And I'm convinced that they do that because, cellular phones pinging all over the place. It's just so much easier to get caught now doing something. If you really want to get away with something, you got to leave your phone at home. You have to avoid CC or Project Greenlight cameras, all that stuff. And it's just easier to write a crime story set in the 70s rather than now.
Well, with everything on social media, and I mean, if you're having trouble, and of course, Steve, I guess this doesn't pertain to you, at least on your phone, but there is a new platform that is available for us, and it is called Truth Social. It is the 45th president of the United States, thanks in large part to the Trump Media and Technology Group, has launched a platform for his own social media, which is supposed to be replete with no woke content. And you're not going to be tweeting, you're going to be providing truthing. And if you do want to send it on, it's going to be retruthing.
Oh my God.
You got to wonder who comes up with these things. And of course, within mere hours of him launching this, it was hacked. Somebody got on the Donald J. Trump account and posted a picture of a pig. So you got
pig pooping.
A pig pooping, yes.
Yeah, it was poop. I think they call him Poop Piggy or something like that.
Yes,
that GIF's been around for a while.
As opposed to Peppa Pig.
Yeah.
You got to keep that separate. So is this going to be yet another failed attempt to jump back into the arena for Mr. Trump and for his like-minded minions? Yeah, Nancy.
This has been easy answers to needlessly complicated questions, and the answer is, wait a minute, what was it again? Is this going to be another?
Is this going to be another
failed attempt?
Yeah.
Yes. And
that's what it said. The Washington Post, the column, I can't remember, it might have been Paul Waldman. I read this morning a column saying the exact same thing you said, Nance. Mm-hmm. And the reason that he advanced, the biggest reason, was that these people who are attracted to the Trump train, they want to go back and forth they don't want to sit there and talk to each other. They want to enrage the liberals, and they want to engage with them and tell them how full of shit they are. And Waldman, I think it was Waldman, said that in and of itself is going to ensure failure because they're not going to be interested in just talking to each other. No.
Right. There was also a column where somebody was writing and saying, look, this guy piggybacks on products. Like he just puts his name on products that he probably is not involved in really developing his own thing. He's just piggybacking onto something and putting the Trump name there, like the Trump steaks, the Trump vodka, and stuff like that. So they don't have a lot of faith that it's going to be very sophisticated.
Well, I mean, this is kind of a ripoff of, in nomenclature anyway. I didn't go to the site yesterday, so I don't know what it looks like. I think I heard somebody say that it's a direct ripoff of another social site that I'm not familiar with, but calling it retruthing, I mean, it's like Twitter's not that into you anymore, dude. It's like you just gotta move on. You're not getting it back.
But wait, there's more. There's going to be the TMTG Plus, which is going to be video on demand. I mean, this just gets better and better and better.
And he's got nothing to do down there in Florida right now, other than wait for an indictment coming from New York, or as Steve said, where's it gonna come from? Do you think, Steve? Where's the first one gonna come?
My guess would be New York, but to me, the easiest case, I think the easiest case, I've said it on this show before, is the phone call to Raffensperger.
You talking about Georgia?
That's not obstruction of justice. I could find a second-year assistant U.S. attorney here who could convict him just on the phone call, and then just have Raffensperger as a witness because he taped it. I mean, think about that. What does that tell you?
Yeah.
Well, I still think that
he doesn't have a flip phone.
They're scared. I just think that they're scared. They think that they're going to lose, that the Trump, magic smoke and mirrors is going to outdo them.
Well, I think it was Senator McConnell who signaled that Trump jumping back in right now would be unhelpful for the Republican chances in the midterms. I think that was some of the reporting coming out. Anyone hear about that? No?
I did. I heard about that. And to me, I thought it was kind of, I know he's a Machiavellian type of guy. McConnell doesn't have any principles or anything, but with a guy like Trump, you give him a challenge like that. To me, that I wouldn't have said that because that would. Oh, really? Watch this.
But here, I don't think he doesn't know that. So maybe he did that for the purposes of he could have plausible deniability. Like, I didn't ask him to get back in, knowing that he's going to get back in. And, you got to think 2 or 3 layers of insidiousness with these individuals. So, I think that could have been the thing that they were trying to do is, goad him to coming back in. And then he could back and say, I didn't ask him to come in. He has good faith in arguing or bargaining with the Democrats. Well,
Yeah, I mean, McConnell's not dealing with Orlando the way that Machiavelli did. I mean, this is Trump. So, but speaking on nomenclature, as Nancy was talking about, what about Facebook looking to change its name? May come as early as next week. Has anybody registered Farcebook as a domain name? Because you can sell it to Zuckerberg.
Every time I go on Facebook now, I've made a vow that I'm going to try to quietly, gradually sever myself from Facebook. I have to be on it now because Deadline Detroit gets a great deal of its traffic via Facebook posts, right? Correct, Alan? I don't think I'm
correct.
spilling a trade secret here.
Yep,
so
sure.
As somebody who posts stuff on Deadline Detroit, I have to also post it on Facebook, and you need an account for that. But it's making it so easy. Facebook is making it so easy to disengage because all I get, 50% of the posts in my feed these days are those what they call like farming posts, where some large entity will put up a post that says, come on, everybody here's had a DUI, right? And then you look at the comments and there are like 500,000 people saying, nope, not me, nope. And what that does is it boosts it boosts them in the algorithm so that anything else they post is going to go to the top of people's feeds. And there is simply nothing that is more boring. And I'm 90% on Twitter these days. I'm still a Twitter head, but.
Well, the other thing you got to watch out for is that a lot of these are phishing sites to try to guess your passwords.
Sure, yeah.
So all those people whose password is DUI 12345 have now just sort of been found out.
Yeah, exactly. Or my DUI was on 11/2/73. But yeah, the demographics are terrible. I mean, young people, just think Facebook is a joke. I mean, they're all on TikTok and Instagram, and a few are on Twitter. But
it is. There's been this migration, and I mean, you got to wonder then, is that going to be used as a defense by some of the biggies like Facebook and Twitter when it comes to congressional efforts to regulate them or even try to break them up as antitrust? Will they just go ahead and say, hey, look, I mean, TikTok is there now, and tomorrow it's going to be, WicWalk or whatever is going to be the next app, Truth Social, if it survives. I think it's going to be an interesting way that Zuckerberg and company are going to maneuver this. And I think they might have enough people in Congress who will buy that when they are bought themselves.
I think that's probably true. I don't know. I mean, they've done the classic Microsoft strategy as they've grown, is to when they are threatened by a upstart, they just buy it. They bought Instagram, they bought WhatsApp. Half the apps on my phone, when I boot them, it says, brought to you by Facebook. But at least I can be off original recipe Facebook.
So speaking of Microsoft, apparently Bill Gates' daughter just got married last weekend. She got married to her beau, who was an Egyptian equestrian. Apparently she's got her own horse farm. Coldplay played the wedding reception. Must be nice.
I had Eric Rosenau and the Continentals at my bar mitzvah.
Dude, I've gone to wedding receptions where they barely played Coldplay.
In fact, to date the year of the bar mitzvah, Eric Rosenau, who was European, said, "And now for the kiddies, wipe out." And so it was like, and so finally at the end, a friend, Eddie Salmon, yells out, "Hey, when are you going to play it?" So he got so mad that he wouldn't play any more kids songs. So I told my mother, I said, "Mom, tell Eric to play some kids song So he goes, okay, and now for the kiddies, I love Paris in the springtime. And I was like, oh.
Yeah, the reality is that's a true story. You couldn't make up something like that.
I've heard all of Lengel's stories at least twice, and that one I think is my absolute favorite.
Hey, that needs no embellishment, Alan.
It's the Eastern European accent that kills me, and now wipe out.
Okay, here's the trivia question. Who did Wipeout?
The Safaris?
You got it.
Wow.
Excellent.
No, you don't. Hold on. That's unfair, Con. You can't do any music with Fishman on here. He's going to answer everything. He'll be like the guy on Jeopardy that won $1 million.
Oh, my God.
Any music. He's the only dude I know who sings the Motown blues during closing arguments, and swoons the jury into, an obviously guilty guy to being not guilty,
Hey, Todd, I'm only doing this because if you ever make it onto Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, you know who your phone a friend's going to be for music.
There it is. Yeah, that's it.
He's there for you whenever you need him.
And I'm telling you the truth because he hasn't said anything. He should feel bad about that not guilty he did to that young lady. He should feel bad about that.
Well,
I feel like I should drop into court someday when Fishman is making his
when we get back.
Well, don't text him. He won't tell you.
Well, I'll read it.
Well, what's funny is that on some of the social media groups which I belong, people are like, "Oh man, she married a Muslim. I wonder if she converted." And having to tell these people, well, even if she did, she's off the market. You're not going to get it.
Yeah.
So, anyways, so I've got a question for my two lawyers here. Hot off the presses, Alec Baldwin was apparently shooting a movie on set. And a really tragic situation. He was handling a gun, assuming that it was unloaded, or at least with live ammo, and it went off. And apparently it killed the director of photography and also wounded the movie's director, who had to be hospitalized. Apart from, of course, the big tragedy, is there going to be any criminal liability here?
I'll defer to you, Steve.
No, you go. You always defer to me. You go.
So I just believe, one, it's not enough known about how he was handling the weapon. Under what circumstances was he handling the weapon? Because, I'm going to date myself and go back to when they were making the Twilight Zone movie. That kind of liability that happened on that particular set. There were no criminal charges out of that, but it was a massive. In this case, it's going to be a massive civil suit on behalf of the families and the director who's injured, and it's going to be an issue of whether or not Alec Baldwin will be held personally liable. I doubt that because he's probably already got professional liability insurance on these sets. But I just don't think enough is known as to how he was handling it. Was he, because the most that I see, if he was handling it inappropriately, obviously there was no intent unless something else came out. But there's no intent, would be some form of criminal negligence. But again, which is a much less serious offense than manslaughter or where you're grossly negligent in something like that. In the state of Michigan, gross negligence would be or could be a second-degree murder. But again, in this situation, I just don't think enough is known. But my intimation or my feeling about this is that I don't see it as a criminal matter so far.
Okay, so just for those millennial sopranos that are out there who don't know what the hell we're talking about, the Twilight Zone movie came out in the early 1980s, based on the very excellent TV show by Rod Serling hosting it, which of course had the episode with William Shatner saying there's something on the wing. But
great.
Vic Morrow was in the movie, known for two other reasons, as the father of Jennifer Jason Leigh, who was in Single White Female as well as Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Thank you for your IMDb deep dive here, but let's get to the point of the story.
Hands are above here, and he also played the jackass coach in Bad News Bears. Anyway, but he was in a scene with two underage actors and there was a prop accident involving a helicopter, and Vic Morrow was actually beheaded or decapitated as a result of that. The movie was directed by John Landis, and I remember that there was that, as Todd said, I know there was at least a tort liability trial, wasn't there?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I don't think it was a trial. I think it was a settlement.
Oh, okay.
And I think there was also led to reforms in how children, because Vic Morrow was decapitated, but the two children, it was a scene set in Vietnam during the Vietnam War, and he was crossing a stream with these two Vietnamese children under his arms.
Yep.
And the two kids were killed as well. And I think it was a helicopter rotor, or whatever they call the main thing. It was terrible. It was an awful accident. But I think it did lead to reforms on how much you could use children in night shooting, because the blame fell on John Landis, because they said he was driving for he wanted his shots and it was going late and everybody was tired, but he said, we got to keep going. And I think that's what happened.
Yeah. So, by the way, that movie also had then the reprise of the Shatner episode with John Lithgow on the role. Anyways.
Right. I just want to say one thing about the Alec Baldwin thing. I'm not a movie person, but I know a little bit about it because I've done a little kind of hobby filmmaking. And I know that there is a union position on film sets called armorer. And that is the person whose job it is to keep track of the weapons that are used, the prop weapons, load them with blanks or whatever they use to get a realistic looking muzzle flash or whatever. They're never supposed to use live ammunition, but sometimes they will put in, some sort of explosive that will lead to something. And their job is to check it out, make sure it's completely safe, load it, hand it to the actor. The actor goes bang, bang, and then they hand it back to the armorer, who takes custody of it again. It's supposed to be very tightly controlled. Now, what happened in this case, Todd's absolutely right. We don't know. I mean, we're going to learn more as things go on. But I thought it was interesting that he managed to hit two people, and I don't know what I could see if they were doing like a point of view shot where we're seeing they're facing him and he's supposed to be firing like this, that he could have hit, like the director of photography is usually operating the camera, but I don't see how he hit two people with one, unless he was firing multiple times. But it's a historic story. I mean, he wouldn't have had a machine gun or anything. So I don't know.
Well, Steve, I mean, even a blank, I mean, if you held it up to your head, the concussion from it is enough to kill. There was an actor named John Eric Hexum back in
the
80s who also, he was playing around with the gun and something like that happened. What do you think about this latest challenge for Mr. Baldwin?
Well, I read about it earlier. The first thing, let me make a disclaimer. The last movie I've seen is Purple Rain. So I don't know any of these people you're talking about in all these movies you're talking about. I saw that one 3 times because I really like Prince. But when I read the article this morning before I went to the gym, it was early in the morning, and it just happened, I think. I pretty much agree. I agree 100% with Todd when he's saying that we don't know enough. But the thing to me that was interesting, the first thing I thought was just what you were talking about before. Was he screwing around with the gun or no? It seemed to say, and we'll find out for sure, that no, they were actually filming a scene. So that means to me that somebody, Nancy described something I never heard of before on Armorer. I didn't know that person exists on a set, but I think what the investigation will do is they're going to try to track everything for the length of time that led up to this shooting. And I don't know whether it was one shot or two either. Those of us that were in the gym discussing it thought the same thing. Nance, how the heck do you hit two people with one shot and kill one and almost kill the other?
Right.
But I think that this is one of those situations where it's very difficult to charge somebody criminally, whether it's Baldwin or anybody else, unless you have some evidence that says that somebody either knowingly did it, which would make the conspiracy theorists happy, which I'm sure we're going to hear from some, won't we, over time? They're going to say, oh, they were trying to kill somebody. But it's going to be difficult to hold anybody criminally liable in this situation for the reasons that we said. Right. And as you said, they've had those before. The guy who did it to himself, and then there was another one that was in the Post article that talked about
Brandon Lee
of the Crow.
Yeah.
Okay. And So, when you're talking criminal liability, you've got to have evidence either that someone did it intentionally or that they were grossly negligent and that the gross negligence led directly to the death. Who knows where the gun was and who had it first? If there was an armorer, as Nancy says, that'd be somebody I'd go to immediately if I were the police investigating it. That's the first person I'd talk to.
Right.
So, Steve, I mean, geez, even Prince made 2 more movies after Purple Rain. I mean, Under a Cherry Moon and Graffiti Bridge, and you just sort of got stuck in one gear.
I was done. I haven't been in the movie theater. Well, I shouldn't say that. Thomas the Tank Engine I saw with my kids, those kinds of movies, but only those were in 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and they were children's movies. I don't.
But you watch every U of M basketball game you can.
Well, I got season tickets there, so I can see some of them. And by the way, back to what we were talking about before, I got my season tickets online, and it's the same crap you were talking about. They wanted me to download them to my phone and blah, blah, blah. So I sent it to my son, who has a dumb phone, and he did it. But I'm going to get with them, too, and see, are you really trying to say that a guy who played there can't get his season tickets unless he has an addictive device? I mean, seriously, are you kidding me?
They did install a 3-point line now since then. So
hey, let me tell you something. The reason I know that is because we played into our 50s and we won championships. Why? Because we could shoot, and once they started giving us 3 for 2, we could play a lot longer. So there's a lot of guys that played a lot longer because of that line. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm waiting for them to lower the tennis net so I can get back in the game. So we had earlier in this week, we had the passing of, I guess really quite an American icon to many, and that's Colin Powell. And it's always interesting when somebody of his stature passes because there's so many different narratives about him. So hero, villain, both, neither. Where do we go with Colin Powell?
I'm ready if anybody else is.
Please, Steve.
I think he's a hero with respect to every single thing he ever did in his life, except for making that speech. And I think that he recognized that as he grew older. And I think he realized that he was going to be remembered for that more than for all of the other fantastic things that he did. And I think it probably drove him crazy. I obviously never met him or didn't know him, but I'll bet you his wife or people who were friends, close with him. I think that's the thing that people are always going to remember because of the disaster that it caused. And I'll say one other thing, and I know it from personal experience. I don't think there was another person on the planet other than Colin Powell that could have got the public to even halfway go along with it by making that speech. Without him, I had people tell me, regular, everyday guys, what do you think? I'd say, I think it's crazy. Well, but General Powell, da-da-da-da-da. And I believe personally that probably haunted him as soon as he saw the disaster that it was. It was interesting reading about his conflicts with Rumsfeld and Cheney, which I absolutely believe because there were 2 guys that had never been in a war, and they knew everything about war, of course, even though they'd never been in one. So I think it's unfortunate, but I think at the end of the day, all the fabulous things he did will be outweighed by the fact that he gave that speech and served as a basis for people deciding to go to war, to a useless war.
You're absolutely right. I think he was not the first good soldier who followed a bad order and lived to pay for it. And he won't be the last, but in this case, it's something that we have to remember. When you were talking about things that are said when people die, Saeed, I thought you were setting up for the Trump reaction, which was. Yeah. Did you see that?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Oh, well. Our former president. This is a post that somebody put together on Twitter. Of course, when something like this happens, former presidents issue statements. Okay, and Jimmy Carter, Rosalind, and I joined so many around the world in mourning the loss of General Colin Powell. George W. Bush, Laura, and I are deeply saddened by the death of Colin Powell. President Obama, in the same vein. Statement by Donald Trump. Wonderful to see Colin Powell, who made big mistakes on Iraq and famously so-called weapons of mass destruction, be treated in death so beautifully by the fake news media. Hope that happens to me someday. He was a classic rhino, if even that, always being the first to attack other Republicans. he made plenty of mistakes. But anyway, may he rest in peace. I mean, this, yeah.
Schmuck. That's why we call it the Schmuck of the Week is named after
Right
him.
there.
No, you can't call him the Schmuck of the Week. He's the Schmuck of the Week every,
I'm saying it's named after him.
Christian will know this.
I know, exactly.
Because he's into this, he knows all this stuff about entertainment. My parents used to say, the reason why, and Craig was telling me this back in the day, you don't call him the Schmuck of the Week because he's the Schmuck of the Week. Almost like Fred Astaire back when he was Man of the Year or Best Dressed Man of the Year. And the Duke of Windsor won it a couple of years, but they never gave it to Fred Astaire anymore after he did it because it was understood he was the absolute best there was. So it was just, you just didn't give it to him, you know what I mean? And that's why we can't give Trump. I mean, I don't care what he says, but that guy is just,
he's unbelievable.
I don't know what it would be like to be in the same room with this guy. I mean, it's unfathomable that somebody could actually say that about, like what Steve said about Colin Powell.
Yeah,
he lived with this decision, and I think I could see, and you can almost feel that he lived with that decision the rest of his life. And I think that trying to get some recompense was his becoming. I think here, look at it. It's almost like sometimes out of a loss, you become a better lawyer. I think he became a better statesman as a result of that, and was able to, just like when Obama was elected. He was an Obama supporter at the time. And, even though he was always a Republican, he was, but more importantly, I think he truly embodied being an American. And, as broken as American is, he was broken in some ways. And he was, that's kind of the country. But a guy like Donald Trump, I mean, there's a special place in hell for that guy.
I know.
It really is,
Well, that's why the award, the Schmuck of the Week is named after him, Todd, not after Ricardo Montalban. We do think of these things very carefully.
Trump had two interesting things to say about his son. He said Donald Jr. is going places in politics, and then he complained that people are very hard on Eric. And Stephen Colbert was mocking Eric last night on the show. But so
yeah. There you go.
What does it say then about our remembrance of figures like Colin Powell? I mean, you've got, of course, the infamous United Nations speech. Reading about something I think some people weren't aware of, allegations of him covering up the My Lai massacre has also gotten some coverage. How do we then? I mean, here we've got journalists like Alan and Nancy. I mean, do we present everything? Do we present it as soon as they die? I mean, what are the metrics to then view a person like Colin Powell for historians like myself?
I think that in fairness, you want to capture. I mean, the essence of him being a really decent guy, dignified and stuff like that. But I think as a reporter, as a journalist, you don't want to portray someone, particularly a public figure like that, as totally angelic without putting a few warts in there. I got some grief. Somebody at Henry Baskin, the attorney, kind of legendary attorney, passed away, and I put one little wart in there just to say the guy wasn't perfect. He was reprimanded by the Attorney Grievance Commission for having an affair with one of his clients. And I was told that one of his family members was not happy that I put that in there. Look, and,
the Mitch Albom approach, which is to, fit the deceased for angel wings and a white gown and a halo, as they depart the earthly realm. Some people really like that, but to me, a person is made more interesting by considering them as a whole, as particularly a public person like Colin Powell. I mean, you don't walk into your grandmother's funeral and say, she never could cook anyway. Although some people do, and they get a big laugh at the wake. But the Colin Powell was he was a statesman. He was a soldier. He was a public servant. He deserved to be considered in whole. And to mention that this was probably, as Steve said, the biggest mistake of his life, and that he probably regretted it, I think that's just part of his story, and to leave it out would have been criminal. So, I'm a big believer in, what do the Italians call it? Chiaroscuro, the shadow that makes the light more vivid. That to me is how you do it.
As opposed to Omerta.
Yeah.
He's obsessed with The Sopranos.
Hey, you know what? I haven't even brought out my Sopranos lingo yet. So if I watch 5 episodes in a row, I mean, I can tell you what exit off the turnpike I'm from.
Gabagool.
I like my favorite Tony Soprano line, and it's not exact, but it's the essence is, I may not have ethics, but I got rules.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Well, wow. I mean, a Mitch Albom reference there, Nancy. I mean, that's like the Jimmy Fallon of journalism.
Oh, he's not even a journalist anymore. Regular readers and people who know me know my feelings about Mitch Albom, and I dare not take the cork out of that bottle because we'll be here for 3 hours. So
speaking of things that may belong best behind a paywall, and the Detroit News, Nolan Finley wrote an article, or actually an op-ed, in which he said that the new voting maps will cost Michigan clout. Is that really the kind of foreboding that we're going to have? I mean, where are we going with the redistricting in the state?
Well, I think one of the things we're seeing is that there's a big problem along racial lines, and while they were trying to make it fair, Republican, Democrat, they've really skewered it for a lot of the black voters, and I think they have to go back to the drawing board if they want to make things fair, where it could end up redistricting, where we're not seeing any state senators from the city of Detroit. It's really they missed the mark, but I mean they're very apologetic about it. They said they want to do it right, and so hopefully we'll see it done right, and where we don't see a group of people screwed out of some power. And particularly, when we talk about that, we're talking about blacks, and we're talking about the city of Detroit. So,
well, no, I just say, go with it, and let's go to court. Because it's gonna ultimately wind itself up in court at some point in time, because if you now then focus on the racial component, then the other people who have a political motivation, Democrat or Republican, is going to be complaining. So it's ultimately going to find itself in court. I mean, I guess making a better record of them trying to get it right is a better way to get into court, is a better way to set the table before it goes to court. But I envision that it's going to be a court proceeding, and I'll be glad to lead that charge.
I lost the thread on redistricting when I was away for a month, so I can't speak about this very authoritatively. But I did have a debriefing with a friend of mine who's been covering it yesterday, and he mentioned that for the first time these proposed district lines cross 8 Mile. Given the migration of African Americans and Black people to the inner ring suburbs like Warren, Grosse Pointe, Southfield, exactly, over the last decade. Yeah, exactly. Is that so terrible? I mean, is 8 Mile such a bright line that it's,
But Detroit is also, I mean, it's the biggest city in the state.
It is, but it's still
for it not to have adequate representation at the state level, let alone congressionally, it's more complicated. But at least certainly in the state legislature, the city of Detroit should have more sway than what we see all the time. Are these sort of people from these small little communities we've never heard of who are leading the charge?
Well, right, yeah. I mean,
well, no, I agree with Alan wholeheartedly. I think it's a design to minimize the potency of Detroit's the potency of Detroit in the legislature. I mean, perhaps I'm a conspiracy theorist, and that's where that comes from. But I got a lot of history as to why I might be a conspiracy theorist.
Okay. Well, like I said, I'll just dip out of this one. So.
Well, I'm waiting for that congressional district to be drawn, going straight down Adams and crossing Long Lake, for all the Pakistani Americans who need their own representation. So let's see if that happens anytime soon and see if it ends up in court. So in the area then of representation, this one caught my eye. Michigan State University routinely ranks as having some of the best dorm cafeteria food in the nation.
Really?
Except right, yeah. Actually, I got to tell you, it is amazingly good food. I was a visiting professor at James Madison College one term, and they gave me a food pass. And the meals there were, this isn't what you see Belushi eating in Animal House. a pre-Purple Rain movie, mind you, Steve.
I saw that one. I saw it.
Boy, just really spectacular food in Case Hall. Right now, though, they have a bit of an issue. Usually, they hire about 6,000 students, I imagine, on work study and for other reasons, to be servers and in various capacities. They're barely able to get 400 on the payroll, which is leading Michigan State to request faculty members to volunteer on evenings and weekends to work in the dorm cafeterias.
And students, faculty and students.
And students too, yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, how weird would it be if your department chair is sitting there and serving you a gyro?
Well, all work has dignity. All work. Okay. I don't care. I'm never going to say it should be beneath a PhD to dish up a grilled cheese sandwich or apparently a banh mi, from what you've said about the quality of the cafeterias there. But what I'm appalled by is it's like they can't just give them some money. I mean, if you want a kid or a faculty member to volunteer to work in your cafeteria, I think they ought to get something in return. I mean, a break on tuition, Well, I aggregated that story for Deadline yesterday, and my teaser for Facebook was maybe the economics department can help them think this through, because it just seems like
maybe some gummies, free gummies or something.
well, then they'd want more food, Alan. But we'll see. I don't know about you, Nancy, but I mean, I'd be worried, especially paranoid after some gummies, that maybe my department chair might spit in my banh mi. So,
well, one of my friends said it's a top agricultural school. They have the capacity to grow some awesome reefer, and they can just pay the students in marijuana. So it's completely legal.
They wouldn't need the football team for revenue anymore. No, look, I mean, I remember when I was a sophomore at Michigan, I worked in the dorm cafeteria for the year, and it was awesome. $3.75 an hour. Back then, I was able to pay off some pretty decent stereo equipment with it. But you're right. I mean, it's an absolutely dignified vocation, but it's just interesting to see then how labor shortages are finding their way even onto college campuses, which are open. Mm-hmm. So definitely something to be considered. Well, speaking of the disruptions, then both to labor shortages as well as other related COVID matters, you might want to go ahead and do some of your Christmas shopping early. Apparently, Bronner's has put out the warning that ugly Christmas sweaters may be delayed or in short supply because of the fact that there's 80,000 fewer truck drivers, as well as all of those shipping containers that are looking for a port off Long Beach, California. How long do you think this is going to last? I mean, are we going to be going into not just this holiday season, but into 2022 with severe disruptions to our supply chain?
That's a really good question, and I don't know the answer to it. What do you think?
I don't exactly have a lot of Christmas sweaters, or if they are, all the patterns are masked in my goth Christmas gear.
Unless you're a Muslim, you don't have to wear an ugly Christmas sweater.
Yeah, but if I do it, I can do it out of irony.
Oh, okay, an ironic Christmas sweater. Okay,
ironic, yes.
Okay.
Well,
there's
Wendell and I, we have it easy.
ironic.
we have it easy. We don't have to worry about obviously strapping for Christmas sweaters.
Right,
All we
right.
have to do is put a little Hanukkah gelt meaning money in Yiddish, and you just put. I used to get a silver dollar when I was a kid on Roselawn. I'd get a silver dollar every day. Not my sisters and I. We'd have 3 silver dollars. That was our presents. And when we started to meet Christians and learn what Christians did for their families and their kids in terms of presents, we'd come back to the house and say, "Hey, Ma, seriously, what's going on? Or this guy just got a new bicycle. This guy, we'd get a $1 Hanukkah gelt." But the good news was they were anticipating all of these shortages, and they know that the Jews won't care that there's shortages because we ain't out there shopping anyway.
Actually,
Right,
the Jews will care because when I was young, all of the major department stores were owned and run by Jewish families. So in Columbus and
Well.
Yet again,
there you go. Bambergers. I mean, you got it. It's like these are not Christian names, but
you have to. We're gonna have to tighten our belt. And it reminds me of a story when be at home and say to my mother, who's European, say, "Hey, Mom, what's for dessert?" And she'd say, "Like nothing." So that's what we're gonna be having, a little bit more of like nothing.
You know, Steve, maybe one of these days you're going to have to take one of my classes and I'll tell you how so many Jews converted to Christianity and why.
One of the reasons was they probably got tired of going 8 days on Passover without going to the bathroom. That's probably what did it to them.
Well, that and, when the Christmas tree got big and the gifts underneath it, I mean, come on. So, well, it's interesting because Halloween is coming up. And I remember when we moved to Lapeer, my dad objected to me going trick-or-treating. And I said, why? He says, here's $5, go to the store with your mom and buy all the candy you want. And I'm like, what's wrong with this? He says, no son of mine is going begging for candy. And it basically made me a Marxian. And then, of course, it changed when my sister, who's 11 years younger, wanted to go trick-or-treating because Princess now had passed the Protestant work ethic, and candy was kosher. Oh, the memoirs of Lapeer to tell you. Well, anyway, as we've already been alluding to, and Todd has certainly been citing regarding the naming of it, we are now about to embark on.
And now, it's time for Deadline Detroit's nominees for Schmuck of the Week.
All right. There are several people who are just chomping at the bit on this one. So, please, anyone.
Come on.
I'll go first.
You've hardly talked.
I'll go first. I'm going to pick Joe Manchin. Once again, I mean, this guy, the more you read about the guy, the more you read about his conflicts of interest, talking about, climate change and stuff like that. He has been in the coal business forever. He's now supposedly in a blind trust where he was elected to the Senate in 2010, and he has made $4.5 million gross from the coal industry. His son has taken over. There's money pouring in, and here is a guy trying to make a determination on the future of our environment, of climate change. It's so criminal. It's shameful that he's a Democrat, but
maybe not long.
That's my schmuck.
But he's not a Democrat. I mean, he's what I would call him a Dixiecrat.
Yeah.
He's a megalomaniac,
a blue dog, or whatever.
He's trash.
I would call him a schmuck.
Yeah.
And his daughter isn't she like big into big pharma or?
Yeah. She was in the EpiPens, and then she boosted the prices of EpiPens when she got involved in it. The family is just so corrupt, and here's the guy, trying to be this principled person and come off. It has become such a powerful senator. It's scary.
She'd make a wonderful match for that Martin Shkreli guy who was similarly moving up the prices. Okay, so one for Joe Manchin. Who's next?
I'll go. I actually was contemplating Joe Manchin myself, but luckily I had a backup. But it's not really a schmuck of the week. It's kind of a collective schmucks of the week. Everybody who in the media and then the citizenry that wanted to follow this stuff everybody that was involved in following Brian Laundrie and Gabby Petito on their meanderings around the world, around the country. And now it turns out that both of them are dead, right? The FBI has said that the Laundrie is dead. And I just think that the fact that these two people who are nobodies, right, other than they're white, and some people said she was attractive. The fact that that was a big story for how long on the media? Your whole month and you were gone, Nance, probably.
Yeah.
So everybody that was interested in them, those are my schmucks of the week. Just because with all these things that are going on in the world that are kind of important, the things we discuss here, things you talk about at your dinner table, this is something that people were sitting around watching all the time. Further evidence that we are in great decline.
I will defend keeping a part of your attention and a part of your brain open to like fluff. Okay. It's for women who don't follow. I mean, you follow sports religiously, which is not really very consequential. And for a lot of women who, particularly these people who love true crime, I mean, these kinds of stories are just, they lap them up. And I agree with you. I think the takeaway for me, and I think it was actually Lee DeVito from the Metro Times tweeted something about this last night. Somebody released a police report from their travels when he was beating her up, or there was a call on some sort of domestic violence. And, he was explaining, we've been on the road together, we're getting on each other's nerves, this kind of stuff. And just to keep that in mind when you look at the facade of, selfies and having a great time, here we are in Utah, or, wherever, it's like you really have to keep in mind that everything that you see, particularly on social media, is heavily manipulated before it gets to your eyes. It has nothing to do with reality, and you need to keep that in mind. But I don't want to step on your schmuck. So.
Well, who's your schmuck then, Nancy?
My schmuck. Oh, okay. I've been gone so long, I had totally forgotten about schmuck of the week, so I had to kind of scramble. But mine is Jim Banks, who, if I still lived in Indiana, would be my congressman, but he's not, thank God. Who yesterday had to be read out by Liz Cheney, because apparently he's been asking for evidence that's being sent to the January 6th committee to be sent to him as well, and signing his name as ranking member of the committee, but he's not on the committee. He was one of the people, he's one of the three that, who was the minority leader in the House of Representatives?
Kevin McCarthy?
Yeah, who put him up for membership in the committee, and Nancy Pelosi rejected him. But he's going around saying, well, in the alternate reality, I would be the ranking member. So, but when, Liz Cheney is pitching you out from your own party, it's like, you're definitely a schmuck. And he is. He's a know-nothing. He's typical dumb right-wing Hoosier. So anyway.
Well, it's like the former guy going around saying the 45th president of the United States. So
no, it's the United States of America. You got to get all the words in there.
Yeah. Otherwise, I'd get it confused with the UAE. Sure. Yeah. Okay, Todd, your schmuck of the week.
Well, it was going to be a collective. I had to study it a little bit more, understanding I was going to be here. Schmuck of the week is one of the favorite topics, and I was going to go after Ted Sarandos, who's the Netflix CEO or co-CEO. But, if you read into what he says, a lot of people are upset that he seems to be backtracking on supporting Dave Chappelle in a stand-up comedy that he did. And, Dave Chappelle, if you look at him in a very basic sense, he could be offensive to a lot of different people, but it's comedy, which he is trying, if you watch it and look at it. But if you look at what he says, he's not removing Dave Chappelle. He's just approaching his employees from a different perspective. So it's not him. So that soliloquy is really unnecessary, but it lets you know how much I think about schmuck of the week. I got to go with Steve Bannon, and the whole Steve Bannon thing, and where it also might be a schmuck in the week in waiting, because if they don't charge this clown, then I got another schmuck of the week over there at the DOJ. But this is
It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, it really is.
For indicting him.
Yeah,
I mean,
so we don't know. I don't think they've charged them yet, have they?
No, they haven't. They haven't charged. They got to. I think they have to go to a grand jury and get criminal contempt.
Yeah. So I mean, come on now. They have to go to a grand jury. I mean, we know what that means. Steve and I know how easy it is to get charges in a grand jury now. Come on now. I mean, just like getting grand jury charges in Trump down in Georgia. I mean, he's like, I could take a second-year law student and just give him the basic rules and let him mow that down. So yeah, right now my schmuck of the week is Steve Bannon. I mean, this guy's a clown. He's a criminal. He truly is a criminal. And he's an insurrectionist and a racist and so many other things that I can continue to go on and very brash about it. And he's actually smarter than Trump. So
much smarter.
Yeah, see, I thought you would have gone with Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan, who was openly.
He was my second.
Yeah, speaking to Republican Congress people to say, do not vote for the criminal contempt charge resolution. Right. So, well, this is actually a strange week because I am not going to be overlapping Alan. My first thought was Candace Owens, odious conservative commentator, who had said that the United States should invade Australia to liberate the people from the tyrannical COVID lockdown that apparently is there, not fully realizing that Australia is coming out of lockdown already. So maybe the bark was worse than the bite. But actually, somebody even topped her. Former National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice, who apparently, along with going on The View and giving her own musings about the evils of critical race theory, said that on January the 6th, he did in fact cry that day. But basically we apparently need to get over it. And in fact, all of the Democratic rancor regarding the insurrection is much ado about nothing. She clearly seemed, by bringing up CRT as well as her views on the January 6th commission on The View, seems like she's probably jonesing for getting back in the game. I think people need to realize that she was the highest ranking national security advisor as national security advisor in the country on September 10th, 2001. Just a small detail for which it doesn't seem as though she ever took any responsibility, nor was there any kind of accountability posed for her. I mean, I would have thought at the very least she should have resigned, but you know,
her specialty was Russia. So had we been attacked by Russia, we would have had a better thing. She knew nothing about the Middle East, about Islam, all that.
Yeah, well, this is the thing, right? So when in 1989, when Bush Sr. was the president, she told Bush, well, we don't need to worry about Afghanistan anymore. Now that the Soviet Union's collapsing, let's go into the Filene's basement of Eastern Europe and see what we can catch up. There's an East Coast reference for you. So I don't even know she was that good.
I was a big fan of Filene's basement.
Oh yeah, So Nancy, yeah.
I was going to say, well, I lost my train of thought there. Sorry. I was going to say, oh, it was, you're familiar with the Twitter expression, there's always a tweet?
Yes.
When somebody has said something and then you just go back into their history and you can almost always, there was, somebody found a tweet from 2012, I believe, and it was saying something about, there's many unanswered questions about Benghazi that we really need to get into. It's like January 6th, but Benghazi, ooh. So there.
That just keeps on giving. On that note, I want to thank Steve Fishman, Prince movie expert extraordinaire, Todd Perkins, Nancy Derringer, of course, and our maestro himself, Alan Lengel, who gets the last words.
Drive home safely.
Great. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
The Craig Foley Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible in part by Lynette's Shrimp House, located in Highland Park. It's Metro Detroit's premier destination, serving juicy fried shrimp, fish, and wings alongside soul food sides and new additions to the menu like turkey tacos and desserts. Located at 13548 Woodward in Highland Park, just north of the Davidson, Lynette's is open for takeaway noon to 8 Tuesday and Thursday, noon to 10 p.m. Friday and Saturday, and noon to 5 p.m. on Sunday. Call now, get some Lynette's.